This issue of Japanese history continues from the previous issue on the Meiji Restoration. The previous article on the Hakodate War concluded the military resistance on the part of the shogunate. From this issue, I will explain the details of the Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Restoration was a revolution. However, the nature of the revolution is quite different from that of France and Russia. The French and Russian revolutions were revolutions that deprived the privileged aristocracy of its rights. This is how the people gained their rights. This is not the case with the Meiji Restoration. The leaders of the Meiji Restoration were the samurai. The samurai were a privileged class, a higher status than the peasants and merchants. The Meiji Restoration was a rare revolution in which those of a higher status revolted and renounced their own rights. With the Meiji Restoration, the samurai renounced their status and became commoners. This caused a strong backlash. It was mainly the samurai of western Japan, such as Satsuma and Choshu, who shed their blood and fought for the revolution. The rebellion of Takamori Saigo, a central figure in the Meiji Restoration, marked the end of the Samurai Rebellion, the end of the Meiji Restoration, and the opening of the road to modern Japan. In this commentary, we begin our discussion with the Great Decree of Restoration of the Monarchy. On January 3, 1868, the Meiji Emperor officially announced the beginning of government by the Emperor following the Great Restoration of the imperial rule by Yoshinobu Tokugawa. This is the great announcement of the restoration of the monarchy. What kind of future did the leaders of the new government, led by Iwakura and Okubo, envision? It was a centralized state centering on the emperor. What stands in the way of that? It was their lords, the feudal lords. Japan's modernization could not proceed without taking local lordship away from them and having direct rule by the emperor. The lands of the clans that lost the Boshin War were confiscated and placed under the direct control of the new government. In 1868, the year of the successful overthrow of the shogunate, the Satsuma and Choshu clans, the masters of Okubo, Saigo, Kido, and others, were still granted lordship over their lands. Or rather, taking land from their masters was not something they could do, even as they became the leaders of the new government. However, Takayoshi Kido and Hirobumi Ito of Choshu believed that the existence of feudal clans was an obstacle to the Meiji Restoration and that they had to be eliminated. By the way, what was the state of the clans throughout Japan? To begin with, the legal basis for their land ownership was that the Tokugawa shoguns relieved the local feudal lords of their fiefs. This basis was lost with the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate. In addition, the Boshin War saw the loss of authority of the domain lords who were either no match at all for the Satsuma and Choshu clans, which used modern weapons, or who had abandoned the idea of fighting. There were probably many elements of instability in the various clans. In light of these circumstances, in January 1869, Toshimiki Okubo of Satsuma and Tosu Tasuki Tagaki and others debated the issue of repatriation of land and people back to the imperial court to their domain lords. As a result, the feudal lords of Satsuma, Choshu, Tosa, and Hizen jointly submitted a request to return their lands to the new government. The action of these leading clans in the Meiji Restoration to return their lands to the emperor prompted all the clan leaders in Japan to do the same. Thus, all land in Japan belonged to the emperor. All of the feudal lords were given the higher rank of nobility and were treated well. The samurai who served under them were also made samurai, and their status as samurai was guaranteed. In exchange for the return of their lands to the new government would pay them a stipend. In addition, although the clan leader returned his domain, he was appointed as a non-hereditary governor and formally reigned as the head of the region. This was a policy of reconciliation established by the new government, and many protests were expected against suddenly taking away all of the territory. Therefore, it was the true objective of the new government to take away their rights step by step. For this reason, many of the clan leaders interpreted this as a relief to the new government, rather than a relief to the Tokugawa shogun for the ownership of their lands. Clan lords were no longer required to give stipends to their vassals, and the government was to give stipends to the samurai families, effectively disrupting the master-servant relationship between clan lord and vassal. This made it possible for the new government to recruit useful shogunate vassals and clan warriors without the clan lord's permission. Such was the case with Eiichi Shibusawa and Takuki Inomoto. The goal of the new government was to catch up with the Western powers and create a strong Japan that would not be underestimated by other nations. At the end of the Edo period, the samurai of the Choshu and Satsuma clans, who had been enthusiastic about expelling foreigners through expulsion of the barbarians, learned of their power by actually fighting the British in other Western nations and realized that they could not defeat them with their own military might. Because of this power differential, the Edo shogunate was forced to conclude unequal treaties, and the Meiji government, which took over these treaties, made the abolition of these treaties a national policy. Hirobumi Edo, who later became the first Prime Minister of Japan, went to the West at the end of the Edo period as a foreign student from the Choshu clan. He knew that Western countries did not have a status system like Japan. He knew that farmers, merchants, and others had the same status, and that this equal status system would make a strong country. So he went on to insist that Japan also give up the privilege of being a samurai and become a commoner, so that all its citizens would be drafted and create a strong nation. But there is still a way to go. In my next entry, I will discuss the various policies that the Meiji government put in place. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel and press the like button.